We'll be getting into the configuration component of our Juniper switch. If you have not watched episode 1, I suggest you do just to catch up to speed, see where we're at so far. But what we're going to do today, here's our switch again. We're going to log in as root. We haven't set up a user yet, so it's going to drop us into the shell again. And to exit the shell to where we want to go, type CLI. And then CLI will bring us into the operational mode prompt. At operational mode prompt, we talked a lot about yesterday about going through the show commands and being able to look at what the switch is doing. But today we're actually going to enter the configuration mode. So if we type configure, we enter configuration mode. First thing to point out is above the prompt we see in the brackets it says edit. At the edit level, you are at the very top of the configuration. So if I do a show, what it's going to do here is it's going to output the entire configuration script. If you also remember, we talked about hierarchies. Now in the hierarchy, you can enter different subsections of the configuration just to edit that. So for example, if you type edit again, and then you type one of the subsections, which would be system, you'll see the prompt change at the top from edit to edit systems. And if we type show now, you'll see we are just in the system subsection. All right. So it's important to know that it can be frustrating at first when you're working with a Junos box. When you're editing it, that if you're typing commands and you're getting errors back, and it doesn't make sense because you think you're typing the right thing, most likely it's because you're in the wrong subsection and the command does not apply there. So be very careful where you are. As you gain more experience with Junos, you'll learn where things are, and you'll be able to navigate through it pretty quickly and be able to do what you need to do in each subsection, and it'll feel more natural. So just give it time. Don't get too frustrated at first. So now that we're in the system subsection, let's type show. All right, and now we just see the system subsection, and the first thing we want to do is we want to fix this warning at the bottom, missing mandatory statements, root authentication. So to do that, you need to learn the set command. The set command is how you configure objects inside the configuration. So if we type set, the next thing we could do is a question mark to see what that next command would be, and we'll see towards the bottom here, root authentication. So if we type set root authentication, hit the tab key to complete that, and we question mark, our next option is a couple different scenarios we can use to set that password. The one we're going to use is plain text password, and what that's going to ask for is some keyboard input to set it. You could also use an SSH key if you want to map that to a certain SSH key coming in, so you can limit what what systems might be able to connect this. But right now we're going to use plain text password, and then you'll hit enter. Now there's a prompt. It's going to ask for the password. I'm going to use ThinkJunos Bang. If you don't put in a special character or a number, it'll prompt you to do that. It won't accept a real short plain text, just character only password. So there is a little bit of security built into that just to try and help you to not setting a dumb password. Okay, now if we type show, you'll see that root authentication encrypted password, and then there's a string there that's been already encrypted for you just to keep it from being human readable when you're outputting the configuration. Okay, so that's been set. Let's also set the host name of this box. So we'll do set. If you type question mark, you'll see this, but it's pretty simple. The option there is host name, and then question mark. The only thing to fill in that is now the user variable. So I'm going to call this EX2200 2200-A. All right. Now you'll notice nothing is changing right now, and I want to point this out. We're obviously setting commands on this box, but nothing is changing quite yet. And the reason for that is the way that Junos works is that there's kind of three modes. You can think about it 3 different ways. There's the operational mode, which we talked about in the last episode. There's the active configuration, and that's what's currently running on the system today. That's how we build out the configuration, how we build our forwarding table. And then there's the candidate configuration. Now when you type configure from operational mode, what happens is Junos will take the active configuration, make an exact copy of it, and that copy is called the candidate configuration. Now you can edit the candidate configuration, you can add, delete, do whatever you need to do the candidate configuration. Nothing changes for the active configuration. There's a process called commit. When you run commit, what happens is Junos will check your candidate configuration for errors. It runs commit scripts to check you for errors, make sure your syntax is correct. If everything's correct, it then applies it to the active configuration. And then that candidate configuration becomes the active configuration. The last thing it does there, when it applies that candidate to the active, the current active then goes to a rollback. So you also have the concept of rollback configurations. And on Junos boxes, you can have up to 50 rollbacks that you can easily move back to. So what a rollback is the last copy of the active configuration, and that keeps getting pushed back every time you hit commit. We'll show you that, how you can roll back easily to an old config soon. But that's the process. So we're in the candidate configuration. Nothing is changing because we haven't hit commit yet. Let's do a couple more settings, and then we'll actually commit this to the active configuration. Next thing I want to do is I want to set the name servers. So pretty simple, set name server. Next command is really just going to ask for the IP. I'm going to use the Google DNS, and let's just show you what we've done here. So what you'll see here, we have a host name, EX2200-A. We have a root authentication set up, ThinkJunos Bang, and now we have a name server, 88888. Okay. The last thing I want to do in system here before we commit this is I want to set a user. So to do that, you're going to do set login. Okay, and login is how you create individual local user accounts on the box. And then the next question mark here is the user. So we're going to type in user, and then the user name. So I'm going to make this myself, Oliver. And then the next one is, what is the class you want to make this user? So we're going to say class. Now there's a couple built-in classes, and you can edit and create as many classes as you need to. Each class has a different level of permissions. So the 4 built-in classes are operator, and operator is really limited to operational mode, the kind of person who's just going to be looking at the box, looking for errors, checking for things on the box, but not configuring anything. Read only, that's someone who really only has show commands or view commands. Super user is essentially root, except for it doesn't push you into the shell when you log in. And then obviously unauthorized means you have no permissions at all. So we're going to set up Oliver as a super user. The next command here, we don't really have to fill out anything else from a full name perspective or a UID. It'll do that for us. I think what we need to do here is just hit enter. Whoops, nope, we have to actually say authentication, my bad, and I believe it's plain text password again. So authentication, plain text password, enter, it's going to ask for the password. I'm going to make it the same, ThinkJunos Bang. And now we've created a local user. So let me show you that. Okay, so now we have a login section in here under system. You'll notice still we're in edit system. We've done all of these commands inside the system subsection. We have login, user, Oliver, class, super user, authentication, encrypted password, good to go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to run commit. And I want to show you this here. There's a couple things with commit that can help you out. The first one's commit and quit. Basically what that does is if everything processes fine, quit the configuration, go back to operational mode. That's a one command just to get you out. Otherwise you have to type quit again. There's commit at, and commit at is convenient if you want to actually apply a configuration or apply a change at a certain time period. So it's basically like cron scheduling your commit script. It can be good for maintenance windows or things like that. There's commit check, which will go through and it will never apply the configuration. It will just go through and check that it's valid. So if you just want to run a check and make sure what you've done so far is good to go, you can do a commit check. And that's what I'm going to do first. So we'll do commit check, and that will process the commit scripts and make sure that we're good to go. Now you'll notice it came back, says configuration check succeeds. That means if I hit commit, it's going to definitely apply. There's no errors there. The last two I want to point out here is commit comment. Now commit comment is nice if you're running in an environment with multiple administrators and a lot of logging. You can type in some comments after your commit to kind of say what you did, or maybe a timestamp or who did it, but just a way of adding a little bit more detail to what you've configured. So you could say something like commit comment, and then you could say added user Oliver. Now, what's going to happen is that's going to apply this, because now that I've hit enter, it's going to commit this configuration. We should come back and say commit successful. Okay, now you notice it says commit complete. You'll also notice we're still in the edit system, but you'll also notice that we've now changed our host name. We've gone from root pound to root at ex22-a pound. So now we've applied the host name command we've set up. This means that we've copied our candidate configuration to our active configuration, and what we just did is now our active configuration. The last one I want to point out with commit is the commit confirmed, and this one is a real CYA in any type of networking here. So what commit confirmed is if you're working on a device with remote access, let's say you've shelled in SSH or Telnet, you're not at the same location, and you're making some changes to the device, and you go ahead and you commit it, and all of a sudden you've applied a wrong IP or an ACL or some other type of filter, whatever you did, you've locked yourself out. Now, at that point in time, your really only option is to have some local hands to connect to console and fix it. But what commit confirmed can do is an automatic rollback. So effectively, you'll say commit confirmed. There's a default time. I think it's 5 minutes. And what happens? It'll apply the configuration. And no matter what happens, if you don't log back in within that window and type commit again, it will automatically roll back the last known good configuration. So if you lock yourself out, you wait 5 minutes, it'll reload the last active configuration, and you should be able to connect back in. So that's a real saver if you're working remotely. Definitely remember commit confirmed. It can save your butt. Okay, so right now that's all we're going to do for configuring this device right now. We've set up the root authentication, we've set up the user, we've set up the host name, and some of the DNS settings. So what I'm going to type is exit. Now you'll notice here when I type exit is we only exit that subsystem. We leave system and we just go to edit. We still haven't left the configuration. At this layer, let me go back to edit system. If you want to quit out, your command is going to be quit configuration mode, and this will leave you out completely out of the configuration mode and drop you back into the operational mode. Now we've noticed our prompt change to the operational mode. So that's it for right now. We'll continue on here coming up in the next episode by configuring some interfaces and then talking about how we're going to connect this into our network and what that's going to look like. So just review today, we obviously got into the configuration mode. I explained to you how the configuration mode works, the commit process, the active config, the candidate config, and the rollback. And then we also created a user. So you'll notice next time when we log in, we're going to log in with myself, Oliver, and my password, and we're going to see what happens and what the difference is between logging in with root. All right, so that's it. Thank you. We'll see you next time.